What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. I saw this post recently on one of the Facebook groups that I'm part of. I thought it would be something that was just interesting for a quick little video because I imagine there are a number of people that have this type of question when they're looking at their graded books, because you often hear about people cracking and resubmitting books, getting better grades, all that kind of stuff, and then they can get some additional value in their book. Let's check this one out. It says, "Hello all, I have a question that I would like to get somebody's advice or thoughts on. I have this book and I'm debating on keeping it, selling it, or cracking it and pressing it to see if I can get a better grade. My thought right now is to hold on to it for a little while as it's the first appearance of the Wendigo, and I'm not sure if that character will be featured in a future movie or Disney show. Any advice would be appreciated." And so you can see right here, this is this book, Hulk number 162. This is the first appearance of the Wendigo. He's on the cover fighting the Hulk. And the reason that somebody might be a little more interested in this book with respect to some type of value in a future movie or increased value is because of Hulk 180. Because if you've got Incredible Hulk 180, that's the first appearance of Wolverine, but in that issue, Hulk is fighting Wendigo, and then Wolverine appears, and they all fight and that kind of stuff. So that's the first thing. It's like that's why this book could potentially be, at least from this person's perspective, why could this book potentially be one that you would want to keep, because it might increase in value. There are various thoughts in the chat for this one. Jump down the comment section, and then I'll give you my thoughts on this one. So first comment here: why grade it in the first place? The grade is worth more than the comic. No way on earth this creature will appear in films. I mean, I'll say that that's not the case here with a book that's graded a 9.0. I mean, it's a Bronze Age book. It's a minor first appearance, we'll say, but it's still a Bronze Age book. It's definitely in that type of condition worth grading. We'll get into the pricing and that kind of thing. This person says, good chance for a grade bump. See the pick of the grader's notes. The light crease to cover and spine do not say color breaking, so they could possibly be pressed out. That's one of the things we'll talk about, is going and checking those grader's notes. And it says, while the Wendigo may appear in future films, he did appear in that X-Men arcade game in the 90s. That appearance is very unlikely to be significant or create a version of the character that triggers some sort of speculative excitement. I completely agree there. So with what that person asked was, is there a reason that this might go up because of an appearance in a movie? I mean, it's possible for a very, very brief time. I mean, we've definitely seen that where, you get somebody that shows up in the trailer and they're really only in the movie for 30 seconds or something like that. That's how I could see this playing out. And it's where, yeah, maybe you hold on to that. Maybe you get a spike for 2 days, when that trailer drops. And if you don't sell at that exact moment, you're out of luck. So to me, that is not a reason to keep this book. I would not be keeping this one on by being speculative. This person says, I've cracked out 30 slabs since I've been collecting, and not one has come back higher grade. So that's something else. That's being able to identify if a book can bump or not. There's always this misconception out there that you can just crack anything out and get the book pressed and clean, you're going to higher grade, or if it's an old label, you'll get a higher grade. Does not work that way. There are certain things you look for that tell you if that book can get a higher grade or not. Now, that has changed over time as different pressing and cleaning techniques have come up. There are different things that could potentially get improved, which we can talk about a little bit as well. And then you got this person says, it's a cool book. The only reason I'd keep it is I'm cracking and pressing this one soon. Do you know if the book was pressed previously? Are you willing to gamble that CGC will give it a lower grade? That's the type of stuff you have to risk. Let's go check out the pricing on this book. Because remember, this was a 9.0. So one of the tools that I use a lot and I talk about on here is GP analysis, or GPA as most people refer to it. And I looked up Incredible Hulk 162. We're looking at the universal copies. And if we scroll down here, we look at a 9.0. So the last sale of a 9.0 was in October of last year. It was actually kind of like a bump up in price. So if we look at the history of sales, you can see in 2024, 237, 325, 193, 173, 312, 320. And so one of the things with books like this, or just more vintage books in general, you need to look at the price of that grade. You also need to look at the price of the grades around it, because sometimes you get outlier sales. And I would say that $320 sale is definitely an outlier. But if we look at the 8.0, 135, 8.5, 179, 9.2, 330, 9.4, 365. So I would say the 9.0, like the 320 sale, like clearly seems a little bit out of line, kind of an outlier. It's probably more likely this book is somewhere in the 250 range, maybe 300. Like 250 to 300 is probably about where I would put a 9.0. Okay, so if we're looking at that and you say, I want to try to crack this book out to get it pressed and cleaned and, try to go for a higher grade. One reason you might want to do that is if you want to try to get the better copy of that book for your personal, your personal collection. One reason could be that you're going to try to sell it then for more money. So if you're going to try to sell this book for more money, let's look at the higher grades. So if you've got a 9.2, 330, 9.4, 365, 9.6, 814. That one still seems a little high. The 12-month average is 700, but we'll say 750 for 9.6. Based on this, if you cracked this book out, and let's say we did value this book at $250 for a 9.0. If you crack this book out to get it regraded, this one is from 1973. So you're going to have to go into CGC's like vintage tier. I think they're raising the price now. I think they're raising it to like $45. And so, or it's like $42, something weird like that. So you get that discount. So you have, one of the accounts and it costs you like $35. Okay. So you've got $35 plus, the additional amount for if you're shipping it in, are you doing multiple books at once? But you're going to have some additional costs. We'll say it's $40. You're going to have somebody press and clean it. Let's add on another $20. So now you're at $60, and that's probably on the lower end, but $60 to get all that work done on that book. So if this book right now in a 9.0 would sell for $250, you add in $60 of cost. Now you've got to sell it for at least $310 to break even, plus some fees and that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll say $330. So if you got a 9.2, it's not worth it at all. You have to, at minimum, expect that you can get a 9.4. And then for all your work, you're going to make like maybe an extra $20 after the costs that go into it. So really, you need that book to get a 9.6. Do you think your book is going to be able to get a 9.6? Maybe it will. Maybe you think this book could get a 9.6, but also it could get an 8.5. It could drop. Not just, yes, I know there is some variation in grading. You can definitely have half grade shifts and that kind of stuff. And even in some cases like full grade shifts, but you can also damage the book. You're cracking that book out, you're cutting it out of the case. You're having somebody work on it. You're shipping it multiple times. CGC is handling it. The possibility of that book dropping to an 8.5 or an 8 are not 0%. There's a decent percent, chance that something could happen, and you now have a book that instead of $250 is worth $180 or $150, and you spent $60, and so you just lost like $200 trying to do this. So it's probably not worth it. Now we're going to jump back over to this book, because if we take a close look at this one, let's zoom in and just kind of see what we can see. It's not, obviously we don't have the back cover or any of that, but if we look at this book, you can see a few pretty clear spine ticks already. There's like one down here. I don't know how well you can see it on your screen. I'm zooming in as far as this one will go, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6, 7, maybe 8. We'll say 6 to 8 pretty clear spine ticks. And this isn't like a high res scan. So there's probably other things that are going on here. So with 8 spine ticks, the best case scenario is probably a 9.2. And if we jump over to the CGC certification page, so if we look up this number, we go to CGC's page, we look up that little number right there. It tells us there's light creasing to cover, light spine stress lines to cover. So it's possible that the creasing could be pressed out. But those color breaking ticks, you know, that we see when we look at this, you can't press a book hard enough to get color breaking ticks out. They just don't go away. You can make things look less pronounced, but the color break is the color break. And so I think best case scenario, this book maybe can come back a 9.2. And with what we saw here, 9.2, you're going to add maybe, you know, $50 in value. Maybe, like, if you were lucky enough to get that $320 sale, like, no value. But so maybe $50 to $70 in value. It cost you $60 to do it after selling fees. There's no benefit. So I would say, you know, from this person's question, should they crack this book out and get it pressed and clean and resubmit? Absolutely not. I would not. If you just want a higher grade copy of the book, your better bet is to sell your 9.0 and just go buy a 9.2 or a 9.4. You know, you can see with the pricing on this one, this book, you have what I call price compression, where you get a very little change in price over multiple grades. I would just go and try to buy a 9.4. You might have to wait for an auction to get this type of price. A fixed price, somebody's probably asking $450 or $500. But you wait for an auction, maybe you get it for $350 or $360. That's the way to do it. You know, you can upgrade 2 half grades, or however you want to call the 0.2s, you know, or full grade. And then you end up with a much better book, doesn't cost you that much more money, and you can sell your 9.0 and back that out of the cost of the book. So if you want a better copy of the book, you know, for your personal collection or keep it or whatever, that's what I would do. I would not try to crack this one out and resubmit. I don't think speculation is the way to go on this book, unless you are gambling on like a 30-second cameo and you'd have to have that book listed all the time. That's where you have to catch the lightning with that book, where somebody sees that cameo, they go and just pay whatever it is on eBay, and, you know, you get lucky. And that's such a high risk that it's just, the likelihood is very, very low that you're going to get anything out of that. So if you don't want the book, I would just sell it, you know, fixed price, list it on eBay, put it up for like $275, or $300, you know, you're under the last sale, and you'd probably sell it relatively quick. And if you want to get a higher grade, I would use that money to buy like a 9.4. And I absolutely would not try to crack it out and resubmit that copy. If he was trying to crack this out and resubmit, you'd be looking for flaws where they are non-color breaking. That is the main thing. Now, some things can be very difficult to see inside of a slab. Sometimes you just cannot really tell until you crack that book out. But there are some things that are very clear, you know, that there are bends or folds or that kind of thing that do not break color, and they are very possible to be able to be pressed out. There's also all the new techniques that have come out over the last few years, where people can remove or greatly reduce things like foxing and staining and tanning. And you can use those types of methods. And that's something where previously books that maybe couldn't get a bump can now, if you're willing to use those techniques. The other thing with those techniques, I'm kind of torn on them. I'm not a huge fan of them. I think sometimes they make books look fake, like it just doesn't look quite right. But the other thing is, those techniques tend to cost more money because they can be time consuming. So you need to have a pretty big benefit that comes out of it, because that could cost you, I don't know the exact pricing, but say that costs you $100 or $200 to get that done. You absolutely would have to be able to get a 9.6, maybe even a 9.8 out of that to be able to have a benefit with this book. So it's not really probably worth it with a book of this level. It's going to be more worth it if it was a book, say, like a Fantastic Four #1 or an X-Men 1, or, you know, something that's bigger, where a half grade or a full grade gives you way more added value. But that's my thought on this book. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What would you do with it? And I will see you on the next one.